To be honest, I'm getting very concerned about Eberechi Eze's situation. I know the transfer window is still ongoing, but due to the things that have happened over the last couple of days, I am quite concerned. Now, if you didn't know about Eze's situation at Crystal Palace, he had a release clause of around £68 million, but unfortunately, the deadline for that was on the 1st of August, and now that we are past that date, Crystal Palace can go to any other team and say, you know what, we want way more money than £68 million. They could ask for damn near 80 to 100 million pounds for a player like Eberechi Eze because he's that good. We have to be honest about that. And there are other clubs that are in for him, whether it's Bayern Munich or Chelsea. I know Chelsea are possibly looking at getting in Xavi Simons, but you never really know what could happen in this transfer window. And we all know with Arsenal fans how much they want Eberechi Eze. However, because this release clause has basically been removed and we are past the deadline for that, Crystal Palace now have the upper hand in that situation, and if there are any deals to be made for Eze, you have to go through Crystal Palace, and it's going to be hard for Crystal Palace to be able to replace Eze with someone of his particular stature or to reinvest in the correct way, because Eze is a very big player for them. I mean, he's helped Crystal Palace win the FA Cup last season, a trophy that is probably one of the biggest in their history. So that's why for me and for Arsenal it's very concerning, because I don't know why prior to August why they just didn't deal with any sort of release clause with Crystal Palace or do any sort of dealings. Apparently there are talks of Arsenal making an initial bid of around 50 million, and we're going to have to see what the hell Crystal Palace are going to do, or whether or not they will agree a deal of around 50 to 60 million for Eze, or just ask for a way higher price, and whether or not Arsenal will go for that. And it'll be interesting, because if Arsenal somehow don't get Eze, then who is going to be the other players that Arsenal could possibly go for? Who is on their shortlist and who are they linked with? And you never know, maybe as time goes on things can change, but currently I would say Crystal Palace does have the upper hand because there are many clubs going in for Eze. And one of the things that very concerned me was the fact that because Ethan Nwaneri is possibly re-signing a new contract with the club, that's why their stance on Eze has reduced. And I think that's absolute nonsense, because even if Nwaneri, who I believe is a good young player, you should still go for a guy like Eze, because he would really help the team. He would be a good backup to Odegaard, and he can play left wing. And we all know how much the left wing has been a bit of an issue for Arsenal over the last coming years, and with Eze, with a guy like that, he would really help out. We all know, especially in my previous video, I talked about how he could potentially break low blocks and deal with those sort of situations, so he would really help Arsenal in so many different ways. And even as a player that used to play for Arsenal, it would be a magical story for him to come back to the club. Now with Crystal Palace, they said that they wanted 35 million up front and then the rest in installments, but I don't know if Arsenal are going to do that. In fact, Arsenal have been talking about possibly trying to sell more players, whether it's Zinchenko, whether it's Gabriel Jesus. There are other players there that are looking to get out the door, especially players like Vieira as well. And I don't know whether Arsenal will be able to do that, especially with the high wages those players are on. And it does create a big concern about Arsenal and their wage structure and what they've done over the last couple of years. And as time goes on, it makes the wage dealings over the last couple of years with Arteta and Adu and whoever else was there look even more damning, because it's crazy how you have certain players on such high wages. But that's no here nor there. With Eze, I'm not sure if Arsenal are going to get him at this stage. Apparently there are talks of an initial bid and there are talks about personal terms, but Crystal Palace can easily say, yeah, we don't want to sell him, we want to keep him here. And yes, his contract does end in 2027. However, by the time that ends, Eze will be 29 years old, and there will be questions on whether or not Arsenal will still be willing to get him at that time. Maybe they might, but I don't think it's worth waiting all that time just to get him, especially when Arsenal are a team that need to win right now. Anyhow, that's my thoughts on the Eze situation. I know maybe people are a bit concerned, especially after pre-season and the games we had against Tottenham. And one of the things with Eze that I really think about is, as good as a player as he is, if he were to join Arsenal, how will we use him, and will we allow him to be creative in the sense where will he have his freedom to play on the pitch? Because we know with Arteta he has a very structured, rigid system, and if Eze comes to Arsenal, will he just be stuck and shoehorned into the system, or will he be allowed to flourish and play the way he knows how to play and have that creative freedom? Because that is something that if you do bring a player like Eze to the club, you have to do that. And we've seen it with the likes of Jack Grealish, where he was essentially shoehorned into a system of Guardiola's tactics, but we all know with Guardiola he gets the job done, so people allow it. But with Arteta, it's a completely different story, and that in itself is why there needs to be serious questions of, if a guy like Eze does decide to come to Arsenal, or if Arsenal do get him, how will we use him tactically, and will we allow him to to be creatively free. But anyhow, that's the end of this video. Quite concerning in my opinion. I know there's still time in the transfer window to get him, and maybe, you know, maybe deal with, have some sort of dealings with Crystal Palace, but I am concerned. Anyhow, that's the end of this video. Hope to see you soon in the next vid. Please like and subscribe, and see you soon.